Welcome, everybody. We are live. What is that on Dan's? Your green screen is misbehaving again.
No, man. This is my camouflage Bersaglieri sniper.
Okay. I had a big glass of eggnog with 2 ounces of bourbon in it right before the show. So
I don't know. That kind of sounds like it's gonna curdle in your guts.
I don't know. I'm done. So I should be fine. If you overdid it, yeah, that'd be a problem.
Actually, the reason why I'm wearing this helmet that's incredibly camouflaged, Bersaglieri, is because actually you got me into it. I'm doing an RPG.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it's the Twilight 2000, and I'm doing it with the Chief.
Okay.
And so that's it. We found the helicopter, and now we're sleeping tight.
There you go. So there's a new RPG on P500 as of yesterday. That's Ted Racer's new I, Napoleon game. It's like a card-based. Ted describes it as an RPG. I'm not sure I'd call it an RPG, but it sounds pretty neat, actually.
That's right.
You start playing as the young Colonel Bonaparte, and who knows what'll happen.
Hey, Dave, so, Matt, Charles,
sounds
Carl,
cool.
Hethwil, Matt, Dave, Mike. It's Fucko.
And Fucko. So all the usual suspects are here. So tonight's topic, and I want to get right into it because we might get rerouted into something else. Is Operation Market Garden. And if you haven't, if you're watching this after the broadcast and you haven't seen A Bridge Too Far, pause right here and go watch A Bridge Too Far, and then come back and we can resume this discussion.
Artie, let me ask you a little bit of history of the Market Garden, okay? I know it was it a fiasco, a complete fiasco?
There are people who I think will tell you that. I wouldn't say that. I think it was an operation with where the objectives all had to be met in order for the operation to be successful, and they weren't all met. So the advancing British armored column did not make it to Arnhem in time, and that's why it failed. There were too many points of failure.
So what was it? A big retreat, or no? They kept pushing on.
They did retreat somewhat, yeah. But the British paratroopers, there was about a battalion and a half of British paratroopers that were in Arnhem. They ended up surrendering after several days of fighting. There was another big contingent of British 1st Airborne paratroopers that were trapped north of the Wall River, and they had to be extracted like a week or two later. And that is actually shown in Band of Brothers, if you've seen that. The 101st Airborne, who was obviously in the area at the time, helped to extract those British paratroopers.
And when was the Dutch I don't know exactly, liberated? Was it during that time?
No, they didn't liberate the entire country, and their Germans, there were very harsh reprisals against Dutch civilians after Market Garden too.
Oh my God,
Jeff, we will get to Stalingrad, just not this week.
Why is he asking about Stalingrad?
Because last week we were supposed to talk about Stalingrad until I got
stuck talking about Stalingrad.
Not really. We talked about the CSRs instead.
Oh, scheiße.
Which we're not talking about this week. So yeah. So I mean, it was a.
You know what? I'm going to watch Market Garden tonight. That's what I'm going to do.
It's a great movie. It's one of those classic British-produced war movies. It's some kind of pipe tobacco that.
Yeah. It's very smoky. Take your time, chill with a jar full of decaf coffee. You know what I'm saying?
So. The movie kind of hits all the high points. There's a lot of other stuff that is kind of beneath the level of the movie that the movie just doesn't have enough time to talk about. But it is a very good movie. I'd like to introduce tonight our very special guest, Volko. Howdy, Volko.
Howdy. How you guys doing? Not so special, but I am a guest.
You're special. With a name like Volko?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I mean, seriously. Volko, since you're on, and Artie, my cousin, said, well, since we got Volko on, let's pump up his new game.
Well, who's the designer of Plantagenet, actually? Is that you?
It is not me. The designer is Francisco Gradeja of Barcelona, Spain. He's also got a design on 30 Years War, operational. We know him affectionately as Paco. And he, in addition to having designed, I'll say Plantagenet, because I'm American. In addition to that, he was the one who got our Discord server for the Levian campaign series going, which, you know, we originally, Paco and I had the idea that we could use that to, you know, find some play testers for our designs. And then I thought, well, why not? I knew there were various Levian campaign designs in work at various stages by various people. And I thought, let's just all gather here and you know, and basically feed each other. And it's just been phenomenal in terms of all of that. That is not just, I mean, we've got play testers who are quantitative whizzes. I don't know how they do it, but you know, we'll say, well, what if we change the effect of crossbows to this, you know, and a few minutes later we'll have, well, then they have a 13.5% chance of taking this castle, you know. I mean, I'm like, well, that's fantastic. And we, you know, everybody kind of knows what everybody's doing. And that way we can, if we come up with new ideas, we can proliferate them, we can cross-pollinate in that way. And also get a good sense of where progress is and test each other's games and provide feedback and all that. So I have to say, you know, because I'm kind of a Twitter junkie, you know, as my, you know, public behavior might betray, but I've been spending as much time, at least on Levian campaign Discord, you know, since this thing got going. And so Paco was the one who started that. So I'm so happy to, in any event, I'm so happy to see his game listed. And so far, so I think we're at about 24 hours. I don't know what the pre-orders are, but we're doing pretty well.
Volko, can I ask you some behind the scenes question concerning that?
Yes.
So that is your system, right?
He was going to ask anyway.
You're the brainchild of that system, is that right?
Yeah, well, that system, Volume 1 is Nevsky. But like with the Coin series in Andean Abyss, I knew that there were a series of medieval operational warfare settings that I wanted to explore, stories that I wanted to tell. And so from the beginning, it was a series. And like with my first idea for the Coin series, I kind of had a 4-volume series in mind, visiting more or less each corner of medieval Europe. The second one of those did that, Spain, Almoravid, and that was originally going to be Volume 3. But I moved it up to Volume 2 because somebody popped up, Albert Alegre Jove, also out of Barcelona, as it turns out, like Paco, to research it. And so I had access through Albert to Spanish historians, Spanish language sources, Spanish art expertise, and all of that. But then, you know, then we had the same effect as with the Coin series, where other people were saying, well, I could design a game on the Hussites in Bohemia in the 15th century. And then Enrico Acerbi in Italy, who, you know, had done he's done designs and all kinds of things, not just medieval Italy, but of course he knows medieval Italy, agreed to my proposal to work to do a game together set in Italy. And that's Inferno, and so on. And now we, you know, like with the Coin series, we have things going on that I mean, I wouldn't have even had the idea, much less be able to do it.
So Volko, my question is, when someone wants, let's say I want to do a Coin series, okay? God help everybody in this world. Let's say I want to do a Coin series.
Yeah.
Who licensed that system out to me? You or GMT?
Okay. So Coin series is, in effect, I don't know whether it is or isn't legally, I don't know, but in effect, a trademark of GMT Games. I'm a freelance designer, and the deal that I have with GMT, and I think most freelance designers and game companies work this way, is if they take my design,
yeah,
and they publish it, but they have to, publish it, which means it's a long process. You got pre-orders and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But once they publish it, they give me an agreed percentage of royalties on their sales, but the intellectual property is theirs. Now, this is all subject to negotiation and contract, between the designer and the company. But my deal with GMT happens to be because I have a long relationship with them. Gene is, is a good friend of mine. Our families know each other at this point. We've been working together, quarter century or so, right? So I know he's going to do the right thing, and I don't have to worry, right? Okay. But the way it works with me and GMT is it's GMT's intellectual property, the game design, everything to do with it, and Coin Series is a trademark for them. Now, they understand also that it's not like they can copyright or patent
a system
or game mechanics, right? They can't say, well, the way the Coin Series lays out the sequence of play, nobody else can do that. They can't do that. And they're
TSR tried to do that back in the day. They failed.
Yeah. Well, Gene's not that way, and he's not gonna try to do that. As long as somebody else doesn't try to benefit from and water down the investment that we have put into Coin Series.
Okay, but it's funny that you say that, because Phil Collins, do you remember that when he put out his first album, In the Air Tonight? Remember that drum sound?
Yeah.
That's a patent drum sound.
Yeah, I remember there was a case with Queen and David Bowie and Under Pressure, and wasn't it
some rapper
Ice-T, Ice Baby, and all this, and he did a certain, and I don't know what the outcome was, but they sued him.
But because you can't take a certain amount of bars that's recognizable. Right. That's understandable. Yeah. But
I'm no attorney, but I think board games are not music. So
our resident Vanilla Ice expert has spoken.
It's Volko.
Is it Vanilla Ice? Is that?
It is Vanilla Ice.
Thank you. Volko, as you can see, not my genre. But
in essence, what Phil Collins,
I like Queen.
What Phil Collins did, it's like copywriting your dulcet tones, the way you speak.
Right. Yeah. And look, if you write in a book, there are certain people can quote that book and quote your words in certain ways to certain degrees for fair use, for critique and reference and the like. But if they do it too much, and especially if they don't give you credit, now it's plagiarism and they become legally vulnerable, right? So there is that kind of thing. So I don't, there's not going to be a court test on the Coin Series. So
that's good.
So that's good.
Yeah.
So
for me as a designer, I don't care. So there's a GMT kind of has an interest, like I say, in protecting its brand and its trademark and what people identify with its level of quality or standards or whatever. For me, what do I want? I want to influence the state of the art, and may a thousand flowers bloom. If people are taking something I've done and they incorporate it in a different way into a new thing to bring joy to the world, fantastic from my point of view.
I understand.
So I wanted to ask, how many Levian campaign? So I think there's one that's out. Nevsky is the only one that's actually released, right?
Yes, January is now the uncertain forecast for when Almoravid Volume 2, which is the Reconquista in Spain, gets to market.
Thank you.
A long pipeline to go from the desert of Mongolia, where the thing is produced and loaded on the. But anyway, so the forecast right now, unsure, but the forecast right now is it starts crossing the Pacific in December and to market January. Volume 2.
And then there's two more on P500 right now.
Two on P500 right now. Okay. Inferno, which is Tuscany, Guelphs and Ghibellines and Rebels and all that kind of thing. And then just now Plantagenet War of the Roses from Paco. And total Nevsky to everything that has its own channel on Discord as a measure, right? Where there's something that's been done. In some cases, very little. But in other cases, thriving. A total of 20 different projects in Levian campaign, of which I would say beyond Inferno, over a half dozen are chugging along and going to be ready, before we can get them to market. We have an abundance of creative output on that Discord server.
Volko, because
This is
I
going to be
associate-
part of that huge torpedo that hits my wallet in January from GMT.
Well, but this is the thing. Because GMT can only, first of all, there are only so many artists it has access to. It only has the cash reserves to produce so many times, and it understands that it takes time for the market to absorb a series. All of us can only afford so many games a year. All of us don't have the time anyway to look at or play so many games a year, right? Gene knows that, right?
Yeah.
So fine, we may have an embarrassment of riches in terms of ready designs. It doesn't mean like, a dozen games from one series are going to go on P500 at the same time, nor does it mean your wallet's going to be hit by, more than one at a time over the months, right?
Well, let's hope. They may all show up on the docks at the same time.
Volko, did you know about that? There's a Robotech coin game.
I don't know it. I have heard that, but I don't know practically anything about it.
Okay, so what happens? It's your baby.
I've noticed. Let me say this first. I've noticed a bad habit of some commentators who keep saying if it's got asymmetric factions and an action menu, then it's a coin game. And I don't think, although those are distinctive features of the coin games, I think that's unhelpfully reductive.
They are certainly features that predated Andean Abyss.
So I don't know anything about Robotech reconstruction.
But I've heard that same comment.
Yeah,
I've heard that too.
So you or Gene didn't get nothing from this if it's a coin game.
I've heard that Root is a coin game. I've heard that the Expanse game is a coin game, and neither of those are coin games.
The Troubles by you Donald, that's going to Compass. I think when you look at that, you will see very clearly the coin route to that. Okay, you will very clearly see the heritage, and I don't think you would quibble with that. In fact, I think he'd be happy to acknowledge that. And that will be a game that GMT is not producing, but that will see the get to the market, and I think just shows that that the series has influenced the state of the art, which is what I want, and that's the glory. Again, I'm not doing this to make a living, and GMT has plenty of IP. GMT has more ready game designs than it can push through its production pipeline right now.
Clearly.
Okay. So there's no harm, and no, I'm not going to get anything from the Troubles financially, nor is GMT, nor should we. Because and again, we didn't do the work. Hugh and Compass did the work to produce the thing, because an idea is really easy. Ideas are a dime a dozen. We get new, people hit me with ideas for, you should do a coin game on this or that, all the time. It's getting the thing to not just to playable prototype. That's a big step. But then from there, testing, developing, tuning to make the thing sing. That's the real work. And then the art and the production. And then most of the money's in the production, the physical production anyway, not the software that comes from people like me.
And I mean, in some cases, it takes, a decade plus to develop these things. Think about how long Bruno was working on Time for Trumpets, for example. That's just one example.
All his life.
So.
And Volko, I wanted to ask you something. Maybe it's me. When I think about you, I think about modern, but you're going to all this ancient history. So what gives? Why ancient history? Where's your studies in ancient history? Not your studies, but your
yeah. So
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'm a history major, long-term history buff, also international relations major, foreign affairs, and retired intelligence analyst. Right. So I care about modern stuff. I think modern stuff is really important. And
but being a history major, what did you focus on? What was your dissertation on? You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. So I didn't do a doctorate. I was a kind of a, yeah, it was a liberal arts history undergraduate degree, and I did some, some postgraduate work, not to a degree at GW, and various things. But what did I focus on really comes from the hobby. I focused on military history, right? I focused on military history.
Yeah, but what era?
The war game. Okay, so this is the thing. I'm a tourist. I like to travel around. I don't really, I mean, there are eras that charm me at certain times, and I go through big phases. And I was in a colonial phase, and I did, in the 90s, I did Wilderness War. I had World War I phases, Civil War, etc. World War II, like everybody else, Vietnam, things that recur. Anyway, I play these games to travel to other places and times like a tourist. And I don't want to go tour the same thing every time.
Yeah,
so
just like
what
an
I
artist.
look for, so what I look for design projects, and particularly if it's going to be a series, is what are the gaps in coverage? What are the troughs in the repertoire? We have games on all kinds of eras and topics and scales, but there's an accretion of them for certain things. I mean, there's a ton of Market Garden games, okay, if you want to talk about Market Garden. And Market Garden is a fascinating and important campaign. However, there's a lot more on Market Garden than Operation Varsity, and there's a lot more on World War II than there is on the Middle Ages. And there's more generally at the strategic and tactical levels than the operational level in between. And there's a lot on modern warfare, but there was, before the Coin series, I thought, too little telling of the stories of internal war, insurgencies, guerrilla warfare, which are so common, not just in modern times, but in history. And so I see in that, I'm like, okay, there's something I'm interested in, because there isn't enough for me to play to satisfy me. I think we need to fill in this trough because there are untold stories or insufficiently told stories. And it's the same thing with Levy and Campaign in the Middle Ages.
So, I mean, do you have, are you planning on, do you have another experiment happening in your head that you're going to fill other holes? Or, I mean, that's not your quest to fill holes.
Right.
But I'm just saying, do you have something else brewing that's not what you're doing, that you're going to be doing?
Well, brewing, yes. So you and I had some conversations in the past about manhunting. You remember that?
Yeah.
So manhunting in that is an activity that is like, but not exactly like warfare. It's not exactly warfare, but it has
it's intelligence,
strategic aspects.
Intelligence.
It's law enforcement. It's military action. Sometimes it's it's its own mix of things. And I have a design that I hope to get to market. It's it's following its path, and nothing in board games happens fast, called Hunt for Blackbeard. If that gets to market one day, and if that succeeds, yes, we could do a Hunt for series that visits all kinds of episodes throughout history.
Now, why would you do Blackbeard where you can do Hunt for, I don't know, Hunt for Hitler or something, where you're going to grab more people? Am I wrong with this question here?
Yeah, it's funny you should say it that way, because I actually had the presumption, and I don't know that it's borne out yet. I don't think it bore out in the P500 numbers when we tried, that pirates are popular and Blackbeard's the most popular pirate.
Yeah.
No, so there would be no problem. But it struggled on P500, and we pulled it. And the reason we think that it struggled on P500 is that it's a double blind game, and you could not solitaire it in that form. There's a 2-player game, full stop. Okay. And that isn't, that just isn't up to standard now.
Is it really?
There's an expectation that you can play it on your own somehow, either a full solitaire system, or it's the kind of game, which I think I would argue Levy and Campaign. I mean, I do argue it in print, because we have a little, here's a couple players. If you want a solitaire Nevsky, here's how to do it, and it'll work, But that was not true for Hunt for Blackbeard. So that's what's going to happen is we're either going to come up with a solitaire system that gives you the experience of the game solitaire, or we're not going to offer it.
Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah, sure. So anyway, so I thought that would be popular, but why Blackbeard? Different question. Why Blackbeard? Because it's local to me. Because I live pretty near where Blackbeard spent his last years, where the game takes place, around the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Just north of there is Williamsburg. It was Williamsburg and the governor there and the Royal Navy posted nearby that went after Blackbeard, that carried out, that are the hunters in the game, that carried out the hunt for Blackbeard. And when they found him, they killed him, but they took some of his crew prisoner, and they brought those back to the jail in Williamsburg. That I, when I'm down there, which was frequently, I jog past there basically, So it's close to me in a way that. The Virginia frontier and the French and Indian War was close to me, and I did Wilderness War.
That's too cool. That's too cool, Volko. That's, that you're going to spark off another series because, like Jason La Riviera says here, hunt for Bin Laden, hunt for Jesse James if you want to go to Western stuff, hunt for, I don't know, some guy in Italy there, Michelangelo, whatever.
Exactly, absolutely. Hunt for Mosby would be a good one. Naval World War I raiders and World War II as well. You could do naval operational hunt for games. I would probably want to do hunt for the Swamp Fox in South Carolina. Just moving a little further south each time. But absolutely, it's the kind of thing that it's a conflict. And it's an interaction of strategies and tactics by two sides who are analyzing each other and acting and reacting. That you can find cases throughout history. But how many games we have? There's not zero games out there, but half of them are fictional, and they're few in number. So yes. However, I have years of work with Levy and Campaign to go, so we'll see. I'm not gonna, no problem.
But this new system, that's your field of expertise, 100%.
Well, it's something that I touched. It's not my principal field of expertise, but it's something that I touched. And the original in my career, it's something that I touched, and so I knew people who that was their expertise. Okay, and I worked with them. And in one capacity, I worked with one of them to create a game called Kingpin, which was the hunt for El Chapo, the Sinaloa cartel leader, Guzman, that the Mexicans carried out successfully. And so that game, for a training purpose, gave me the idea, I think we could do a commercial game on this, and that led me to Hunt for Blackbeard. Now,
sorry, Artie, I'm shellacked with questions here.
No, this is great. I have no work to do at all.
Are you stepping on anybody's feet intellectually here, on anybody's toes intellectually when you put out a game such as a manhunting or something? Are you encroaching on CIA stuff you can't say? You know what I mean?
No.
I don't think the CIA was around in the time of Blackbeard.
Exactly.
I mean, the only person you could make mad about it might be Richard Berg, and I guess that's academic now.
Right. And in terms of Richard Berg's Blackbeard, this is what I would do is a very, very different, a very narrow slice. Richard Berg's Blackbeard looks at piracy in that period in that region. Right. So overall, right, operational strategically, I'm looking at a single episode, a very narrow slice of it. So there's not just reacting to Strelnikov. Thank you for the tours in Vietnam, and thanks for the recognition for Fire in the Lake. I just want to let you know, might matter to you. I know folks, including a former colleague in my local VVA chapter, and got to know them, and so they are the recipients of any royalties that I get from Fire in the Lake, and several other games goes to VVA because they're just a really great group. VVA helps, it's by Vietnam Veterans of America, is by Vietnam veterans and their families, but their mission is to help all American veterans and their families in need, so that, you know, it's never the case that one, I think their logo, their phrase is something like, you know, one generation of veterans will never forget another. Right. Anyway, a fantastic organization. So Fire in the Lake, anything that comes to Fire Lake goes through me to VVA.
And have they embraced your game? Do they play it?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if they play it, because I don't know that any of them that I know. I mean, I know there are clearly there are veterans who are wargamers, but the folks I know here in my area in Northern Virginia, I don't know that any of them necessarily are board gamers. But they did embrace, and they let me, you know, address the meeting. You know, they meet and they bring in different folks. If somebody's published a memoir, they had a fantastic talk by the person who organized the Vietnam War Veterans Memorial, and just an amazing story of the battle to get that, and the creative activity and the organizational activity to get that memorial made down on the mall. Anyway, so they have events like that, and I got to be like the speaker, you know, and talk about here's how board games can help the public understand the history of the war. And I happened to co-design a game about the Vietnam War and Fire in the Lake, and show them how it worked. So that was a really fun experience for me.
Uh-oh, we've lost Dan. No one knows where he's gone. Here's back. He's on the bottom now.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you were saying Volko.
There was another question earlier about, and I didn't quite catch it, about looking at a system. Oh, when I look at an unknown game and fiddle with it, do I see systems and numbers or stories and narratives? Interesting. Well, this is, if it's a military historical game, if it's a historical simulation, if it's a war game, etc. To me, it succeeds with me if I see stories and narratives. Right. I feel that the reason I'm playing it really is not to solve puzzles, and it's not principally to win and, you know, grind my opponents in the dust. The reason I'm playing is tourism, is time travel. I want to be transported to whatever world you're modeling. And if all I see is systems and numbers, then somehow on some level for me, it's not giving me what I'm looking for. Now, at the same time, of course, how do you get to be a great writer? You know, you read a lot and you go observe the world, but you also read a lot what other writers do, right? I'm sure this is true to compose music.
Yeah.
You probably listen to music a lot, a lot of different music.
To grow. You have
to grow. You have, because that's how innovation works. Nobody is inventing the whole thing from nothing. Everybody is taking something and putting it together in a new way for a new experience and a new purpose. So of course it's the same with game design. So I am looking at systems and maybe numbers, you know, but I'm shopping around for what can I grab from this and maybe use to my own purpose. So I'm constantly trying to expand my toolbox as a game designer. So there is that. But I war game because I want to suspend my disbelief. I want to feel like I'm in that environment learning something about it. And that is about stories.
Now, Volko, do you go out of your comfort zone wantingly in Euro games to grab something, to learn something? Or is it just war games?
No, it is what crosses my path. And probably there's going to be some reason that I'm interested in it. But it absolutely can be Euro games because there's a lot that we can learn from other genres of tabletop models. I'm more interested if the Euro game is trying hard to be about something.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Yeah. So the more abstract it goes, kind of, I start to, again, this is because it's what I'm in it for.
Yeah, if there's no story, what's the point?
My kind of fun is, you know, pretending to be somewhere else, tourism, as I said. So through the games. And so it doesn't matter if it's Euro or Ameritrade or whatever, you know, or things I don't know the category of. The point is this a place I want to visit? That's kind of the first question I ask myself.
Would you say that that Euro games as a category have generally had a much larger mechanical toolbox to work with than war games have? And I would think that that's changing as we see more Euro mechanisms getting pulled into war game designs.
Yeah, I can't defend that impression quantitatively. I can't tell you, well, there's, 5,300 mechanics here and 2,200 there or something like that. What impressionistically I can say I see is that wargaming has been pretty doggedly traditional over the decades, and that has been breaking up, that has been widening out. But we started with a set of formats, one format which was hex, CRT, etc. Combat factor, movement factor, things like that. All right, that became very successful, and we all grew up with that, and it proliferated. And within that, there was a focus on particular big, especially European or American wars. And so topically and mechanically, we had a kind of a track we were following down.
A linear road.
It was kind of linear. Yeah, it was. I mean, not completely. And there absolutely are glowing exceptions, that kind of thing. But it was, it was pretty high, I would say hidebound, I have to say, for a few decades.
I accept that characterization.
Okay. And we're proud of it almost, and we're Grognard, what are we grumbling about? We're grumbling because somebody is impinging on our, track here, right?
I'm walking on my lawn.
Yeah. And the issue became, how do we defend this? How do we keep this channel going so we don't all just die out? That was like our concern, in the 80s, 90s, and more recently, rather than can we blend, can we widen, and actually have connections among the tribes rather than just defend our tribe? Let's interbreed more, and the latter is happening, right? It's absolutely happening. But that suggests to me impressionistically that part of that track was an over-attachment to certain mechanics, while Eurogames were about reaching a broad audience, family members of all ages, and being clever, innovative, interesting, and stand out from the crowd mechanically, right? And excelled at that. So again, impressionistic, but I think there's a case there to be made that, yeah, the answer to your question is yes.
Artie, I have a question for you actually concerning
this. Sure.
You being the grognard, and Carl Brenner being the grognard, and they want to stick and and monster games, this and that. Now, what is wrong with expanding? And I say what's wrong because there's a lot of grumbling. What is wrong with expanding a system? Or look, Bach studied Vivaldi, for God's sakes. If it wasn't for Vivaldi, we wouldn't have Bach.
Well, okay, so as a pretty traditional hex encounter gamer, I mean, most of the stuff I do is traditional hex encounters, and I do other stuff too, but that's kind of where my sweet spot is in the kind of old-fashioned traditional hex encounter, in which there is still, I think, a fair amount of innovation happening. I have no reasonable cause to object that we're starting to incorporate new and different mechanics, some of which are borrowed from Euros, whatever that even means. And B, that we're starting to attract people that aren't normally attracted to, or haven't traditionally been attracted to war games. People of, not even people of different demographics, but people of different interests, people who aren't part of the traditional wargaming sort of audience. I can see literally no downside to that other than just being crotchety. And I think much of the grumbling that we see is just that. It's just crotchety old hairy men grumbling about whatever. They'd find something else to complain about if it wasn't this.
I mean, I think I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I think there was, I just don't think it's any longer the case. There was a real issue that if in your hobby, you like a certain kind of thing and you see that hobby shrinking. So again, I'm going back to late 1980s, early 1990s, you know, where are we just going to die out? Is wargaming basically going to be gone because there's going to be computer games and then collectible card games and all, right? Okay. So if you're in that situation and you have a shrinking capacity of the industry, what is that industry doing? Because there were, like, what happened to GDW, to Game Design Workshop, which was a very, you know, we're doing regular, I mean, they had Traveler, right? And they had then a war game department that was very, I mean, it wasn't going to look beautiful, but it was going to be a really functional, well-designed, well-honed hex encounter historical war game, right?
Right to the end.
Yeah.
GDW.
And in the end, they're doing Space 1889, and I, you know, right? And I don't know what Frank Chadwick went off into, didn't he? For a while. Am I confused?
No, I mean, I forget who I think Space 1889 was Frank's, and I know that Frank has done a bunch of miniatures work both with GDW and in recent years.
Right,
and
he's
now
done a lot of recent, So the fear at that time, which turned out, I think, to be wrong, fortunately, is we can't, you know, water down anymore the capacity we have and the interest, the interested players that we have by flitting about with all kinds of other endeavors, because there's this limited capacity. But then what happened was we were wrong about the effect of the internet and computers. It was the opposite. It fed interest in our hobby. It fed the capacity to produce traditional board war games. It fed innovation within that channel, as you mentioned, right? And we now have, you know, quarter century on, and expanding, not just expanding board game industry, not just an expanding range and variety of historical games, but expansion, you know, the tide lifting all the boats, expansion in the traditional gaming as well. And there are young guys out there now playing, you know, SPI monsters from the 70s, right?
That's right.
There they are. And we know about them, and we can share in that and feed that interest. And so now that danger is past.
Yep.
And so
and the
now,
grognards,
as you said, we can embrace the flowering of variety, because we don't have to be concerned that what we particularly like is going to die out. It's not going to die out.
No, and you know what? And the grognards are still grumbling. I'd like to punch one right in the face.
Yeah.
That was not that idea that computers and computer games were going to kill board hex encounter wargaming was not a minority or fringe opinion. Jim Dunnigan talks about it right here. Oh, traditional hex encounter war games are going away. They're all going to die. It's all going to be replaced by computer games. Right here. This is like 1982 or
really?
1984.
Well, we all feared that. We all feared.
Yeah, I did.
It just happily turned out to be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because it reminds me when the drum machine came out. All the drummers, oh my God, we're going to be out of a job. But me being a percussionist, a rounded hitter, I thought, no, man, it's going to liberate the drummers. And we got the best drummers in the world right now.
Of course.
Check that out.
Now all the drummers are drum machine programmers.
Man, are they wicked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
And again, because there's a there, right? Because there's a thing that a human artist can do, right? That a machine that I can buy is not going to do.
That's right.
Right. And it's the same with the format that was so successful for Avalon Hill and SPI and GDW in the 70s, the hex encounter format game. There's a reason hexes are useful for simulating warfare. You know, we don't have to be worried about. In fact, there are big time Euro like Settlers of Catan, if you've heard about it, uses a hex map for a reason.
Tons of Euros use hex maps.
Actually. You know, so we don't have to cling to it out of fear. That's what I'm saying. Use the tools that achieve the purpose you want, and celebrate when somebody reaches for a different tool for a different purpose.
Man, Kurzweil said it. The singularity, man. Everything is going to blend together. You know what I'm saying? It's like tomato sauce.
There's a strain of thought that says that the singularity already happened and we're living in it right now. But what I think is the thread that we didn't fully understand was the internet, right? That the internet would connect for good and ill, right? Would connect people from all over the place. Volko said something very interesting and I've seen a 16-year-old kid playing Panzergruppe Guderian at Compass Expo, a game that's probably older than his father.
Yeah.
So, and I met his dad too. So I think that's an accurate statement. But the somebody that says, hey, you know, I heard about this game and it came out in 1978 or whatever, can like go to BGG and find information on that. Right. And, you know, maybe find people playing it now.
That's it. And even more important, find the one other person on the planet, you know, who's also at that moment interested in the same thing. It's so powerful. And it rescued us.
So, yeah. And I mean, I am in no fear anymore, because I left the hobby for a while in the late 90s, early 2000s, because I thought it just wasn't happening. There was nothing going on. And so I wasn't seeing it.
What were you doing?
Was I doing? I was doing RPG stuff. But the you know, there was just the only stuff I knew about was ASL. But now it's like you kind of have to try to be isolated enough to not have places where you can go to find out who's playing, you know, Panzer Grenadier or War at Sea or Panzergruppe Guderian or whatever. So I mean, there's Facebook groups, there's BGG, there's Consim World for the cavemen that like that website. But no sorry, John, no offense. But it's an old-fashioned website. But the point is that there's places where we can go to find out about these things. I mean, I do a tremendous amount of game research just looking stuff up on BGG.
Right. You know what, Volko? With all due respect, you're one of the shit disturbers that fucked up Hex Encounter.
We've already dropped an F-bomb in this stream, so
I didn't want to.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, watch yourself, young man.
I don't and mess that system up, man.
But I don't. Yeah, and we may have talked about this already. I mean, I don't think I have. I think I've done the opposite.
Exactly.
I mean, because I think that maybe what I've done that's not Hex Encounter for some players can be a road to Hex Encounter that wasn't as wide and inviting, perhaps, if I can claim this, before I did what I did.
Yeah, no, and the reason why I'm saying that is the grognards screaming to be screaming at people like you, basically. But you expanded the vocabulary and the interest, so it's
and there's also the
opposite.
You know, and there's also things like this, you know, like conversations like this. So anybody who follows me on Twitter will know that I recently fell in love with a game called Right, Fierce, and Terrible, The Battle of Sluice 1340 by Jerry White. And Jeremy White, if you know Atlantic Chase, you know, or so. Okay, so he's not just working traditional stuff. He might have hexes in there, right? But it's very, very innovative mechanically and conceptually.
I love his games. His games.
Okay. And here's this. It's a Against the Odds magazine from 2011. And it's a Hex Encounter game about a medieval naval battle. And I had it in my collection because I collecting medieval stuff, you know, because I'm into medieval. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is Jeremy White. What the heck, you know? And I played it, and it's not. There's nothing in it exactly that I can say, oh, this is really innovative. it's hexes, it's ships, it's units. You're comparing dice rolls and DRMs to resolve combat. The situations are rather similar to Richard Berg's War Galley because it's a similar thing. It's a grapple and board naval battle with Marines fighting back and forth. But it's so well conceived, scoped, crafted, put together that it generates these really cool situations. The story in it is just wonderful. So, I mean, I was like so excited by this. I wrote up, you know, I don't know how many, it was, you know, big, long, 4,000 words. I don't know what, you know, more than I could just tweet, right? Illustrated history of just what happened when I played it myself. I'm solitaring.
Where is this? Where is this?
It's on the Board Games Chronicle website.
Okay.
Which, if you haven't, it's Michael is his name who does it. He's a Polish wargamer, and he has lovely illustrated, beautifully illustrated session reports on a whole variety of games. And so I convinced him to host in 2 parts because my thing was long and winded on Jerry's game. It's really a pretty traditional hex and counter war game. I mean, you know, but it's just beautiful, and I just adored it. So now this is what I can claim about that in terms of giving life to the kind of thing that Grognards will like. Is if somebody is following what I'm doing in historical games that's not hex and counter, but they hear that, oh, well, Volko's interested in this game, and they read or look at or scan my, you know, long-winded session report on this game. Obviously, you know, I'm a fanboy. It's a labor of love or whatever. I hope that helps bring them to hex and counter, traditional hex and counter war games, because they're beautiful.
And is this Michael Sorbet?
What?
No, a different Polish war gamer.
Okay,
I think.
fun,
I mean,
right?
I don't know. I mean, unless that's a pseudonym on BGG, Leviathan. But I don't think.
Yeah, Leviathan.
I don't think
that's Michael Leviathan Sorbet.
Right. I don't think it's Leviathan, but maybe
Okay.
I've been fooled by.
Okay. I'm gonna check it out, man.
Another Polish, because you know, wargaming. Poland's a center of wargaming and war game design.
Multiple publishers there.
Yeah. So there are probably a bunch of Michaels there.
Yeah, there's a Wojciech Zaleski. I don't know why his games are not around here, man.
Yeah.
This guy puts out tons of games.
There's a lot happening in Europe. And that we aren't aware of yet.
Yeah,
But it's coming. And there's gonna be a publication coming up called Euro War Games or Euro War Gaming. Euro War Gaming. And it's not Euro Games. It's wargaming in Europe. And I did a piece for them on Spanish wargaming.
and who is this Volko?
Who's doing it? It's Frederic Serval in France, Riccardo Massini in Italy, and
Those guys are at their hands in everything.
Jan Heinemann.
Yeah,
Jan Heinemann.
in Germany. Those guys. So they have come together, and it's I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be an e-published book or something like that. And I think it's probably going to come early in next year. I don't know, but I did a piece for them, and it's going to be, you know, examining and I hope celebrating what's happening in Europe in wargaming specifically.
Good for them, man. These guys are intellects and they know their stuff, man. Unbelievable.
Even in France, where there's been a decent amount of cross-pollination with the American and British, I guess, wargame market, there's a lot of stuff happening that if you're not paying attention, we will not ever hear about. So, I mean, that's absolutely right that there's a lot of board wargame action in Europe. We tend to think of those folks over there as all miniatures players.
Yeah.
And that's not really the case.
No. France is big. Spain is big. Italy is big. Italy has a big community of board wargamers. And Portugal has board
very
wargamers.
well fed
England,
wargamers.
you know, UK has, and so forth. Yeah.
They're very well fed, but they're slim. I don't get it.
That they walk everywhere. They take those little vestas everywhere.
And like, what about Russia, man? Russia's gotta have something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's is it Igor Lukyanov? There's like a Moscow war game shop that you see hanging up. No, I know they have them because they popped up when I was working on Nevsky, and they popped up to correct my history.
Cool.
Which is, I'm very grateful.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And they're very heartfelt about it, as any grognards are.
So Just a Guard here says that he started with coin stuff, and I can vouch that he has now moved on to Der Weltkrieg, a game for the players of which even regular hexes are insufficient.
I know, man.
So that's that's on the more hardcore side of things
Der
at this point.
Weltkrieg.
So it is totally possible to do, and I've heard people deny this, and I just don't really see the sense in it. Where if you're going to get into war games, you're going to get right into war games, and blah blah. There's no path. And I'm like, I don't see that. That's I mean, I see the opposite of folks that got into things like Twilight Struggle or Coin or Combat Commander or whatever, and are now playing, what we would all consider super duper hardcore stuff. So
yeah. Oh, and I just someone earlier had recommended. Is it Chamonix? Manhunts of philosophical history. Manhunts of philosophical history. I guess when I was talking about, Hunt for Blackbeard, and I don't know it, but I've written it down. I'm gonna look for it. Thank you.
I have never heard of it or the author. So,
like, what kind of a brain does it take to go into manhunting? I mean, seriously, what are you, normal or what? What's going on? I don't get it.
Well, it sounds like the author of that is an actual, an expert on the manhunt as a phenomenon.
Is he sadistic? You know what I'm saying, man?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this isn't like Hunger Games or something like that, right? This is an endeavor where you have an opponent who's out there, and the opponent happens not to be the general of the opposing army. Right. It happens to be some kind of fugitive. Okay. And, you've got your asset. It's asymmetrical. You've got your assets and your information and your objectives. And so does your opponent. And you're in a contest of, living by your wits to achieve your mission.
It can't be anything but asymmetrical.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? How can it be linear, man? There's no way.
Yeah.
Not any historical game, but only an exceptionally abstract historical game is not going to be asymmetrical. History is asymmetrical.
Yeah, I almost sometimes think we've purposed to find the few situations that are the least asymmetrical to war game traditionally. We seem to like that, but even there are asymmetries,
Volko,
but, yeah.
A stupid question. What are your favorite type of movies? Genre?
So I do, I have a history interests me in all kinds of ways. And so I'm constantly looking for historical truism. So I love I watch a lot of historical documentaries. I watch historical dramas if they're, trying to.
You and your wife sit down. It's Saturday night. It's popcorn night.
Oh yeah, okay. So not much, right? So that's different. So we happen to intersect, kind of speaking about manhunting, but we happen to intersect on European crime dramas. So the kind of stuff you find on BritBox, like
have you been watching these?
And Vera and River and Wallander, and right now we're watching. We're enjoying very much La Casa de Papel.
Yeah.
Known in English as Money Heist.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, plain.
Yeah. No,
that's like calling your game The War.
No.
Yeah, I mean, look, Casa de Papel. But anyway, set in Madrid.
Yeah.
Right. So we do, that's where we kind of have an intersection.
Any Nordic noir?
What's that now?
Nordic noir?
I don't know Nordic noir. What is Nordic noir? Cool. What is it?
It's
like
Norwegian, Swedish type shows. Obviously, the setting is completely different. They dress different, they act differently, and it's basically a film noir series,
Okay.
but in Norway or in Sweden or in
Okay.
Amsterdam.
Interesting. So we watch modern, crime dramas that are European made and set in the Nordic countries. So we watched one in Finland, I know. A British one is Wallander, that's set in Sweden, even though it's British acted and written. And so so it can be in Norway, or it can be in Scotland or Ireland. It doesn't matter too much to us. We're interested.
I mean, if I can suggest one, it's called The Bridge.
These places are selected for their atmospheric weather.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a part of it for us. So Shetland, because it's a kind of a cool, different place, and it's still a crime drama, but it's set in a cool, different place.
Yep.
Hinterland was one set in Wales, I think. Yeah, you like that one? Okay, yeah, we watched that one till it was done. And then some that are actually not fictional. The Pembrokeshire murders, also in Wales, is a dramatization of an actual murder case. And then a documentary it's set in Ireland is I think it's the West Cork murder, if I'm not mistaken. And
I gotta get BritBox.
It's really interesting because it's a documentary on a real murder. It's not even dramatized. It's interviews with the investigator, with journalists involved, suspects. This
is saving me so much money because I have no interest in any of it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, and time, because you can watch these shows. They got so many of them. I mean,
but I can click counters when I'm watching TV, so that's not a problem.
How much of these BritBox shows are transferred over to Netflix? Not many.
Some of them. There's a few of those. There are a couple names I recognize. Some of them are on Netflix.
So we watch La Casa de Papel on Netflix.
Yeah, you obviously watch it in Spanish with subtitles, right?
Yeah.
European
Spanish with subtitles.
Yeah. Well,
so I wonder how different your Canadian Netflix is from our American Netflix. Actually, I don't know. I imagine it's at least somewhat different.
Everything is censored. Every time they swear, they say sorry.
Really?
Sorry. I'm joking.
They put that as a bumper at the end of each episode. Sorry.
So they can't in La Casa de Papel, they can't say hijo de puta. They don't say that.
Yes, they could say whatever they want to say.
I think Dan is joking in a Canadian way.
And Volko, did you ever check out a show called Schitt's Creek, a comedy show?
Jill watches that. My wife watches that.
My wife watches that too.
That's hilarious. All right.
I used to. They got folks from old Second City TV on that, right?
Yeah.
Levy and O'Hara.
Yeah,
I used to watch that show way back when.
It's so Canadian and makes me want to cry.
It's more than Bob and Doug McKenzie.
So look, it's we've passed our hour and we got Volko here. I mean,
So I'm sorry if I interrupted the Market Garden.
No, it's all good. The problem is Dan did not warn me, and he's like, "What topic are we having?" And as usual, I have to come up with a topic. 5 minutes. Okay, let's talk about Market Garden. And then I'm like, finger on the button. Oh, Volko's coming. Oh.
Sorry.
So how do you feel about Levy and campaign coming to the Market Garden situation?
It's funny you mention that, because the first time when I first showed Nevsky prototype to Gene Billingsley, and I'm explaining through and all, and he says, "Could you use this system to do Rommel in North Africa?" That was his first question.
Really, eh?
Yeah, and you know why he asked me that?
Well, because it's going to sell more.
Well, I think because he's like, how far can you stretch this? How far can you stretch this? Just like with Coin Series, like how far can we stretch it, right? So he's thinking 5 moves ahead.
I know.
For GMT. And he wanted to see what the limits were. And so that's what he came up with.
He's thinking as a businessman and he's talking to an artist.
Because originally I hadn't called it Levy and Campaign. I'd called it something like, Medieval Warfare Series or Medieval Operations Series or something like that. But he wanted to say, well, don't, box yourself in.
No, that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah. I mean, my answer is no, and still no, but that led me to, but I think you could do 18th century. You could do the American Revolutionary campaign, probably. You could do and I kind of came to where I am now, which is you could probably do most pre-industrial campaigns. When you get to Napoleonic times and people who are pressed into service for the duration, probably not, because limited service enlistments is an important part of what the system simulates.
This reminds me to get Nevsky finally to the table.
You know
Let me
what?
know what you think.
I think I'm gonna get the some Levian campaign stuff. I have to.
Almoravid looks really neat. It's about the Reconquista in Spain, which is a really interesting topic that's not got a lot of coverage in wargaming. So it's another very attractive topic to me. So I have it on order.
And we just have Granada come out, which is Sekigahara system, essentially, right? For the end of the Reconquista, zeroed in on that part of Spain.
Yes, haven't played that yet.
Yeah, and then coming is Tanto Monta by Carlos Diaz out of Spain, which is a prequel to Here I Stand, and developed by Ed Beach. And so somebody was noting, and you could play that trio of games and get kind of 3 different looks at the Reconquista. Tanto Monta is more than the Reconquista, but it's still in that same closing episode that Granada is.
Yeah, it's got to end with in 1492 is the end of the Reconquista, right? So that has to be in there.
Yeah, it's the rise of Ferdinand and Isabella. So it's in there. I think Granada's a player, actually.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
Are you going to kill this, or are you going to keep me on for 2.5 hours?
We did that last week because we stayed for another hour and a half complaining about the Charles S. Roberts Award.
I know, but that was different.
But yes, it was your fault that time. So this time we're blaming Volko.
Yeah, thanks for indulging me, and I stayed longer than I expected to because it was awesome.
Volko, you're awesome.
Thanks, Volko, for coming, and thanks, Dan, for inviting him, and thank everybody in the chat watching. We would all love to see you here next week on Dan's channel.